All right, good morning, everyone. From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, September the 3rd, with a Hurricane Dorian briefing and an update here. And this briefing covers impacts and hazards as it relates to central North Carolina. And just kind of jumping right into today's briefing, and we'll see the image here on the right is about 30 minutes ago, captured this image, Hurricane Dorian. It's a powerful storm still, although obviously it has weakened since yesterday. Here's the 11 o'clock advisory, and wind speeds have been decreased. We are maximum sustained winds 110 miles per hour, and the track really hasn't changed a whole lot. The one thing that has changed is there are now hurricane watches along the coast of North Carolina, and we are in the process of issuing tropical storm watches further inland as well. And so those will be forthcoming, and we will get those added to these slides here shortly. But our folks here in our operations center here at the National Weather Service Raleigh are drawing those up right now. So we'll get those added. But I will point out that tropical storm watches are being prepared for portions of central North Carolina. All right, so here are the hazards and associated impacts to location and timing information. So let me just get the tornado hazard out of the way, because I think that's a low risk for that, because typically tornadoes occur ahead and to the right of the track. And since the track is staying well to our east, I think the greatest risk for any type of tornado activity would be east of I-95, probably even well east of I-95, Thursday through early Friday. So the other two hazards are the more primary hazards, wind and flooding rains. Going with the wind first, there's a potential for tropical storm strength, mainly gusts. And of course, that could blow over trees, cause power outages, subsequent structural damage if the trees fall on homes, or causing potential injuries, or worse if they fall on cars or homes. The greatest risk for any wind damage of that nature will be mainly east of the US 1 corridor. I've got a graphic that'll highlight that here pretty well, so stand by for that graphic. And the highest winds are expected Thursday afternoon and night, although it'll turn breezy Thursday mornings. But the worst of it, in terms of the greatest risk for trees coming down, will be Thursday afternoon through the night. Okay, so that's the wind. The other hazard is flooding rain. We are expecting 2 to 6 inches of rain from the triangle south and eastward, with lesser amounts west. So the highest rainfall amounts we are still expecting east of I-95, closer to the coast, closer to the center of the storm. And anytime there's heavy rain bands, there's always the risk for localized poor drainage and urban flooding. So that goes with any heavy downpours where you have heavy rain in a short period of time. So the greatest risk for that type of flooding would be Thursday through Friday morning. Our senior service hydrologist, Barrett Smith, is on hand with us, and he will talk about rivers shortly here. So stand by for that as well. All right, so this is another way of showing what we think the greatest threats are. Wind and rainfall and flooding are our greatest hazards. Lesser concern about tornadoes, but certainly non-zero threat there. And our confidence is increasing as well. You can see on the right side of the slide, the arrows getting closer to the very confident part, because the storm's getting closer. We're talking about 48 hours away from when things go downhill weather-wise around here. So our confidence, of course, is increasing. All right, so I wanted to show that there's a 5 in 10 chance, about a 50-50 shot, that we're going to see tropical storm wind speeds, mainly south and east of Raleigh, and that'll be mainly in gusts. We're not really expecting sustained tropical storm force. All we're expecting at this point is gusts, but that's all it takes to blow over trees and cause power outages and structural damage. It does not have to be sustained to cause that kind of impacts. Okay, and then the risk for damaging wind quickly decreases from Raleigh westward. Okay, so that's the probabilities. I also just wanted to point out, this is the hurricane wind speed probabilities, in case anybody in our easternmost section is wondering if they have a risk for hurricane force winds. We are expecting that the hurricane force winds are nearly certain to remain east of central North Carolina. I have central North Carolina underlined there. So hurricane force winds obviously are likely along the coast, or more likely, I should say. And you can see the probabilities for that. But from central North Carolina, we're not expecting hurricane force winds of either sustained or gusts. What about the timing of those tropical storm winds? When's it going to get here? We switched from the earliest reasonable to most likely since we're getting a little closer. Our confidence is increasing that it's going to be around Thursday morning when we see those tropical storm force winds developing for the portions of central North Carolina that will see tropical storm force winds. So you want to please have your preparations completed no later than nightfall on Wednesday, because things are going to quickly go downhill once sun comes up on Thursday. All right, so here's this is the first briefing where we roll out these wind threat graphics just as another way. The purpose of these graphics is another way to highlight where we think there's potential for tropical storm strength wind gusts. And winds of this magnitude, as I mentioned, will blow over trees, resulting in power outages and possible subsequent structural damage. And again, keeping in mind the risk is highest south and east for this wind damage. Keep in mind, too, I'll be emailing these slides out after this briefing is completed. They'll also be posted on our webpage, so if you want to take a longer and closer look at these graphics, you'll have them in your inbox, or you can get them on our webpage at weather.gov/Raleigh. Right at the top, there's a link to these graphics, or will be a link, and you can take a closer look and share those with folks. All right, so shifting to rainfall. We really haven't done a whole lot of changes here in the last 2 days. We're still expecting 2 to 6 inches of rain across eastern portions of central North Carolina Wednesday night through Friday morning. The risk is there for poor drainage and urban flooding. Once you get west of Raleigh, rainfall amounts will remain less than 2 inches, not really much of a big deal. And of course, on the flip side, rainfall accumulations will be higher closer to the track. So that's the way the rainfall totals are shaping up. And I brought this slide back in because just to give you a sense of when things are going to go downhill and how's it going to be for recovery. And clearly today, there's a little bit of light green painted over central North Carolina. That's just representative of a risk for a few scattered showers. Tomorrow, you'll see some colors there representing some rainfall amounts across the southeast portion of the state, but that's mostly going to happen tomorrow night, Wednesday night. Okay, and then Thursday is kind of the primary day when most of that rain's going to fall. The storm will be pulling out Friday morning, so the Friday and Saturday graphic shows central North Carolina dry. So we should have dry, fair weather for Friday and Saturday for any recovery activities or tree debris cleanup, that sort of thing. And then Sunday and Monday, we run the risk for a few scattered showers as the next frontal system comes down south. Not a major weather maker there Sunday and Monday. So all in all, we'll have getting back to some decent weather after the storm exits for any cleanup activities. All right, I want to also roll out these slides. This is courtesy of the Weather Prediction Center, our colleagues up at the Weather Prediction Center who do these excessive rainfall outlooks. And what the excessive rainfall outlooks is highlights the areas with the greatest risk for flash flooding. These graphics are related to flash flooding potential. And basically the way you want to use this is the darker the color, the greater your risk for flash flooding. So clearly Wednesday night, the risk is mainly to our south, and then that risk expands further northward and eastward Thursday and Thursday night with the greatest risk for flash flooding east of I-95. And also you might want to just familiarize yourself with this graphic as well. And again, I'll share these slides will be available on our webpage and by email. And again, this is a sort of explains what I just showed you on this previous slide. So if you're wondering, well, what exactly does that red mean? What exactly does that yellow mean? What's the green mean? Well, the green means isolated flash floods possible. The yellow means scattered flash floods possible. And then obviously the risk for flash flooding increases the higher the color scale. All right, so that is flooding for flash flooding. And again, this map simply shows where we think the greatest risk for flooding rain threat is. Just another way to basically show what I just showed right here. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our hydrologist, Barrett Smith, for a quick little rundown on the river situation. Barrett, what can you tell us about river flooding?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just wanted to give everyone a visualization of what we're expecting with our rivers, and I'll start out just by saying that in central North Carolina, we are not expecting any river flooding on our main stem rivers. Now, Nick just mentioned the potential for flash flooding, so of course some of your smaller tributaries could come out of their banks, but as long as as far as our main stem rivers go, we are not expecting any. These hydrographs that I'm going to show for our basins are based on 1 to 3 inches of basin average rainfall. It would likely take 5 to 6 or more inches of rain in these basins to cause river flooding. And again, Nick mentioned the potential for 6, and it looks like that 6 inches will likely be downstream of most of these points. So this is the Cape Fear Basin, and in the top left, you'll see the hydrograph for the Hall River back over in Alamance County, and you work your way down the points to the Cape Fear River down in Fayetteville in the bottom right, and you'll see some rises there on the Cape Fear River, but certainly we have a lot of ways to go for flooding there. Where we might see the highest rises will be on the Neuse, and that's one of our smaller basins. So Clayton is on the right, Smithfield in the middle, and Goldsboro. I'm sorry, Clayton's on the left, Smithfield's in the middle, and Goldsboro is on the right. And again, you see the higher response or the better response there at Goldsboro. Working north to the Tar Basin, similar theme here in Lewisburg. Things are running flat. We only get forecasts for certain points when they're going to approach flood stage, and that's why a couple of these don't have actual forecasts on them. But again, small rises and greater rises as you work your way to the east. And then finally, the Roanoke Basin, just showing here the volume of water that we have in the rivers right now, and we've got a lot of ways to go before we would have any river flooding. So there are some points further east towards the coast where you could see some river flooding, and I encourage you to check out the offices down in Morehead City and Wilmington for more information on those. But right now, again, no river flooding expected, and it would take a good 5 or 6 inches to get us close to our action and flood stages. So, Nick, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. All right, thank you so much, Barrett. Appreciate it. So that takes us to our key takeaway slide. This is the last slide in our presentation. Then we'll get to the questions. I do see the questions rolling in, and if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box that you have on your screen, and we'll address those one at a time. So our confidence is increasing. We're pretty high confidence that we're going to see this storm. I mean, that's probably pretty much locked in place. Now, our confidence, we can say, is mostly moderate at this point in time because there could still be some changes. I don't want to lock anything in. At least at this point, there's still another day or two before things can really get certain in terms of who's going to get what. So let's just kind of just run down this one more time. Wind and rain are the two greatest risks. Potential for tropical storm wind gusts could blow over trees, cause power outages, and possible structural damage as those trees come down. Highest risk, again, mainly east of US 1. Timing Thursday through Friday. That should be Friday morning. So I apologize for that. I don't want anybody to get certainly. I'm going to change that right now here while we have you on the line because I don't want anybody to be confused. And just like that, we can change it on the fly. So Thursday through Friday morning. Rainfall amounts of 2 to 6 inches, as Barrett mentioned and we mentioned earlier, that'll be from the triangle south and eastward. With lesser amounts west. The highest rainfall amounts will be east of I-95, even higher amounts right along the immediate coast. And that could, when you get rain pouring down like that, heavy downpours, we always run the risk of localized poor drainage and urban flooding. And that'll be Thursday through Friday morning. All right, and then finally, the last risk is the one we're least concerned about, and that is isolated tornadoes. We think the risk for that's mainly east of I-95, late Thursday through Friday morning. All right, so that wraps up our briefing for our 11:30 webinar. I do want to acknowledge one of my colleagues, James Danko, here sitting next to me. He helped prepare these slides, so thank you, and perhaps we'll have him giving the rundown of the briefing sometime soon. But I do want to acknowledge James' assistance here preparing these slides. So our next briefing, we will be sending out these these slides. As soon as we wrap up this webinar, we'll email out these slides. Our next slide set update will be this evening, and our next webinar will be tomorrow morning, same time, same place. And we're going to do an afternoon update tomorrow as well. We don't have an afternoon update for today, but we will do an afternoon update tomorrow. So with that, thanks so much for joining our webinar.